Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. This is the Alex Hayes podcast, and I am your host, Alex Hayes. Joining me today is a longtime friend of mine, Phil Roberto. He is a multi-year successful entrepreneur. He's started businesses. He's built legendary teams. He's exited successfully businesses in the IT professional world. And most recently, he's also the managing partner of Novomod, which is a premier ASIC repair specialist for industrial miners in the Bitcoin space. And I've asked Phil to join us today. He's here to share some of those wisdom nuggets that he has and he's learned along his way, talk about his experiences. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this podcast. Phil, thanks so much for being here today.
Awesome. Small nuggets. Thanks for having me, Alex. I appreciate it.
No worries. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. Talk to us about who Phil is, maybe some of those early days. Where did your entrepreneurial spirit start? Where did that journey begin? Talk to us about the genesis maybe of where you came from, your background, and then how did you transition into being a business owner and entrepreneur?
Boy, yeah, that's it. Okay, all that. All right, all that. We'll go all the way back. So I'm one of three. I got an older brother and a younger brother, and we're a military family. All of us ended up going into the military, but my dad was in the military, cousins, uncles, all that. But before that, growing up, we grew up in a sheet metal shop. That was our family business, sheet metal manufacturing business. So I kind of probably got that entrepreneurial bone from my dad. I was 5 years old, deburring parts in our living room because we had to, put food on the table. So we started out from the get-go, not online with status quo or the standard trajectory that everybody follows as a family. But that definitely planted a seed. I have the entrepreneurial bone I have from the early days. The earliest memory I can remember of trying to monetize anything was when I cut a chunk of copper off of an electrical wire at my dad's shop, and I stripped the rubber off and I stuck it in a little strawberry basket, made a sign at the side of my road where our house is, and it said copper for sale. And I had maybe 5 strings of copper from this section of line that I stole from my dad's shop. And we lived on a wildlife refuge. So maybe 3 cars a day drove by our house. I think I was outside for 2 days in a chair. I saw 3 cars, but it didn't deter me. I stole my mom's dish soap and in a bucket, took my bike around the wildlife refuge, put a big sad face on, and told everybody I was just trying to wash cars for money, and they all felt bad for me. So made some money that way. But I think I was like 7. I can't believe my folks even let me do that, but it's a little wild. Yeah, growing up, it was always everything was kind of fair game. It was, if you wanted to try it, go do it. And I think that's a big part of the entrepreneurial spirit. It's, you can't really be afraid of what's next because you're never going to know what it is anyway. So you do the calculations and you weigh the risks, and if it makes sense, then you just close your eyes and go forward. So that was early years. Later on, I ended up joining the military, and I did that for about 9 years. I went in as a radio man. I was thinking I would be one of the sound-powered phone kind of guys, breaker, 1-9er. Halfway through A school, we merged with IT. So I got to the ship, and they said, "Here's your computer." I said, "Cool, what's that?" So I didn't know anything about anything, but learned real quick and found out that I learned that way. So I'm a little outside of the box that way. I was probably second to last in my high school class for graduating score, thanks only to my buddy who was last. I just don't read. I don't read well. I don't learn with a book, but the computer just seemed to make sense to me. So we did really well in the Navy. Ended up doing network administration and senior network admin, and ended up running the Fleet Message Center in Hawaii, which is kind of runs all of the message traffic for the Pacific Fleet. So we had a team of 52 sailors under me there, and pretty important information that we were sending around. So that was really nice. Good training and experience. I got out in 2006, and I jumped right into computer stuff. Ended up doing network administration for a small used car dealership up in Maine, and then that branched off into other things. Ended up getting some certifications, moved to New York, became director of IT for a commercial printing company, and that was basically the turning point for me. We still had a sheet metal shop as our family business, but I was obviously out of it. At this commercial printing company, they asked me to consolidate several decades of information into a a data storage array. It's a computer server. And I brought in everybody, HP, IBM, EMC, all of those guys. And they did the song and dance. And at the end of the day, it was just all way more money than the company wanted to spend. So I just flipped to the back of all the material and basically made a bill of materials of what these servers were. Realized that the majority of their margin was going into software, which we didn't need. So I asked the owner, I said, I think I can make one of these. I said, if you want, I'll build one. If you just pay my credit card off and we'll see how it goes. And he said, sure, save me the money. I said, great. So of course I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I've got this project. I'm going to build this server, but I need a chassis to put it in. Can you make a chassis? And that's what our family business has done historically. Chassis for jukeboxes, chassis for pop-up targets, chassis for electrical NEMA 3 enclosures, just chassis for computers. So he said, sure. So we made our first one. We were so excited that it worked. We forgot to even include in the chassis the power button, built the whole thing, stood back. We patted ourselves on the shoulders and then couldn't figure out how to turn it on. And it was just pretty big laughable moment. But my current boss at the time bought it and it worked great. And he said, this is amazing. Can you do another one? I said, sure, I'll make another one. So I went back to my dad. I said, hey, he's going to buy another one. So I put a little margin on this one. And then he said, can I have another one? And then he said, I have a friend. And then this guy runs an airport. He's a buddy of mine. He wants one. And then he's got a friend and he's got a friend. And what he didn't know is that he was putting me in a direction that was going to cause me to resign because I just couldn't do what he was asking me to do and what all his friends were asking me to do. So at that point, I talked to my wife about it and we made the decision to pivot from being the director of IT for a commercial printing company to we were going to start our own company. So we started a company called Savage.io, and it's a data storage company. And we did that in 2010. I grabbed only the only people that I knew that could bring value at the time, which was, my dad and my brother. And we started the company. We were grossly underfunded. So we needed to figure out a way how to make things work. So we created stock. We created a PPM, a private placement memorandum, and all of the things. And we learned as we went. We learned about suitability questionnaires and subscription agreements and, what a sophisticated investor was and all of that. We connected up with a couple of very key people who were connected in various money circles. And we ended up with 88 investors, several $1 million, and some very big players that were interested in our growth. So we did that for a handful of years. And I think, I want to say it's the end of 2012 or maybe the beginning of 2013, we were doing well. We were selling to colleges and hospitals and things like that. And then Amazon Web Services came out and they virtualized everything we were doing. Instead of $20,000 or $30,000 to buy this hardware appliance that we sold, which was kicking the pants off of everybody else, IBM, HP, EMC, Dell, right? You could, for $4.99 a month, get the exact same thing online through Amazon. So that was rugged. The only customers we had at that point were going to be anybody with a HIPAA compliant requirement, which means you have to be able to put your finger on the device that holds the data. So medical, hospitals, and things like that. So we were struggling. And it was at that point that one of my customers came to me and he said, hey, I want to buy 2 of your servers. And I said, great. I need you to buy 2 of my servers. What's the application? And he said, I'm going to mine Bitcoin. I said, cool. What's that? And it does this thing. It just is a compute that just solves problems. So I did some research into it and I said, this is awesome. I would love to sell you 2 of my servers. I said, I have 2 rock solid enterprise class server chips in my server. But then I have 48 hard drives that you just don't need. I don't think you need what I have. So I jumped online and I looked up a company called Bitmain, and they were selling at the time, I think, the S1. And I said, I think this is what you want. Here's some S1s. They're just releasing this other thing called the S3. You might want to look into that. And he said, okay, thanks. Sorry, we couldn't do business. I said, no problem. And then I think maybe 3 weeks later, all these pallets showed up at my dad's warehouse. And I said, what the heck are these? And these S3s. So my friend called me back again and he said, hey, did you get my boxes? I said, yeah, what is that? And he said, well, those are the miners you told me to get. He said, you bought, I bought them and, you set them up and we'll split it. I said, split what? He said, well, the Bitcoin. I said, what's that? He said, that's the thing that I was talking to you about. So he gave me Bitcoin 101 and convinced me that if I turned these on, there would be at some point some type of Bitcoin USD conversion that would give me money that would pay for all the electricity that was going to be required. And I was just going to give my time and make this work. So we did that. And I think it was 30 days. We ran them for 30 days and they made more money for us than the last 2 years of selling servers.
Wow.
So we went to our board of directors. I said, guys, we're pivoting. So this is no brainer. So we did that. We pivoted, and I think in 2014, which seems trivial in today's numbers, we were the largest privately hosted mining operation in North America in 2014, end of 2013, somewhere around there. And we just had a small shop. It wasn't that big of a deal, but we were buying everything we could get our hands on, building up server racks. They were spondoolies we were putting in server racks. There was S3s we were putting on bread racks. We were making our own racks and just putting them all over the shop, and basically learning every way not to mine Bitcoin. We screwed everything up twice. It was pretty epic. We actually found out that you can freeze the large fire valve that goes to the sprinkler system in a 45,000 square foot factory. If it gets cold enough, it will freeze and split, and then the water will never stop coming out until the fire company comes and shuts the water off at the end of the industrial complex that your shop is in. That was an awesome day, but you learn a lot. We flooded everything. We put so many fans in the shop to try to get the heat out that we didn't realize we were overpressuring our own shop. 40,000 square feet, 2,000 of it was office space till the end of the day when we went to leave and we couldn't open the door, and it was just a push door. It should open up, And it took me and my dad, both of us, to push the door. We finally opened it and broke the seal, and all the air came in and blew out all of the drop ceiling 2x4 sections and the overhead, blew them all out in 2,000 square feet of office space. And they just never seen anything like it. But then we learned that you need the same amount of air coming in as you have going out, because that matters. During those days, there was nobody to ask questions to. So it was try it, break it. Okay, don't do that again. Try this. Didn't break anything. Let's keep going a little farther. That was basically the game. So we did that for a while. It brought in a lot of needed capital into the company. We were able to hire some really great talent. Yeah. And then through the growth, it was changing in the company, right? The company was not just this little thing that me and my dad and my brother were trying out. There was a lot of vested individuals into this company, which brought a lot of voices. So, from the perspective of, startups, this is crossing the chasm, when you're here and you need to be here and you've got that gap. The same guy can't wear 6 hats. You got to hire people to have several hats, and the right people. And it may not be the people that started, So that's hard. That was hard for our family. We had some falling out because of it. And if, that's really my only regret. Everything else we tried, and you don't know. But I wish our family didn't have the penalties of this industry at the end. And if I knew that at the beginning, I would have changed the whole thing. But it's one of those things you can't undo. So all you can do is just, move forward and try to do the best you can with the time you have. When we brought in other people, other voices, people wanted to do things a certain way. Other people wanted to do things differently. And you find out quickly how much money you don't have when other voices have all the money. So it's one of those things also that you learn, you start a company, you have a great product and you're doing well, and you bring in a lot of big money. There's a caveat to that. And sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes big money comes in with big ideas and a lot of quality wisdom and, executive leadership and things that an up and coming company needs. Sometimes it just comes in the form of a guy who had a big payout in his business because he was there for 40 years and he drops a bunch of money and then he tells you how he wants to do it. And there may not be any additional value beyond that. And now you have to find a way to navigate that along with all the other voices.
So it sounds like you've had a heads down, figure it out as you go along kind of attitude in the beginning, and you had to adjust as your business grew, and it took on a different form as it maybe call it maturity in the business world, right? Where the business goes from startup phase to mature phase, and navigating that sounds like it was a pretty tricky process, especially when you put family in the middle of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was not prepared for that. We were fairly naive growing up. My dad was a pastor, and we hung out with friends, people, so everybody has a common understanding and things like that. When you get into the business world, that's not the case. And you learn quickly that everybody doesn't have your best interests at heart. And a lot of people are, ROI is the only thing that matters to certain people. And sometimes that's fine if you know that. Knowing that is really important because you can set yourself up for a lot of heartache.
Yeah, knowing what's the most important driver for each of the decision makers is key for getting alignment.
Yeah, a lot of sleepless nights, with the missus, a lot of stress, prior to crypto and even some after crypto, when when it's your business and you have a fiduciary, if there's blood that's needed, it's your blood and that's it. And it doesn't matter how much money came into the company. So we were in a position where we needed to make a growing change. But to do that, we needed capital. And there were people that were willing to put in capital, but they wanted additional stake from us. So we've leveraged out all of our credit cards, and then we ended up leveraging our house, and we put we put first lien on our house to the business, which ended up taking years and years to get off during the transition process out. So it was challenging. Throughout that, you learn a lot and you grow a lot and you find out what's really important. Like when you start, you're like, I'm only giving up 20% of the company. And then, well, as long as I have 51%, I can still make the decisions. And then you get to, all I need is a cash out in any kind, in any way. It doesn't matter who does it, how much it is. Just give me a burger and we're going to call it good. And you guys just go have a good time. You quickly realize what is important as somebody who started the business, transitioning out of the business to the next thing. It's not what percentage of ownership you have. It's not, how much money you're making. It's not what your balance sheet looks like. It's, are you sleeping at night? Is your wife sleeping at night? Are you spending any time with your kids? That's the stuff that matters. So, you lose a lot of time when you start a business, and anybody knows, and I know you know that as well. And it's hard. So weighing the cost is really important. And the cost changes as you progress, as an entrepreneur.
What were some of those super early lessons that you had to learn that you've taken with you throughout your entire, entrepreneurship journey here? What were some of those key lessons that you had to learn? One sounds like is just know what your priorities are and make sure you have those. But what would be some other key lessons that you've learned along this lengthy path?
I would say one of them is understanding the cost. That's really important. When you start a business, it's all rose-colored glasses. Everything's going to be awesome. The world is going to love the thing I make. I can't wait to sell it to them. They're going to love it. And then it turns out that they do love it, but they don't know it's there. And then you need marketing, and that takes money, and then you need investors, and that takes sometimes a change of vision. And sometimes that takes, a knock down a rung or two in the ladder. And then sometimes that takes, a board of directors that want to change the entire structure of your company, and you don't have a say in it. So what does that do for your family and then your time? Like they say, the agita that comes from that, know that. Don't know that cost in advance. What ifs, play what if games. What if this completely flops? What if we have to leverage our house and then it completely flops? What if we just walk away right now? Or what if we buy out all our investors and then we just go to the moon? What if? And you play those games and then see how it works. And if you're okay with those answers, and then you move forward. But weighing the cost as much as you can with the education, the understanding you have in advance is really important.
How would you say somebody goes about trying to get an objective opinion on what the cost actually is? Because like you're saying, when you start a business, you've got rosy colored glasses on and everything is going to work and everything works perfectly in your mind. But how would you suggest that somebody like, how do they get that information to really assess what the cost actually is going to be?
Sure. So I think it's industry specific, right? So I've run businesses that I can operate from, an office, and I've run businesses that I don't see my family for days or weeks, right? So every business is different. What I could have done early on is I should have got into business meetups, small business meetups. They're in every city. I didn't even know that existed. I would encourage anybody starting a company to grab a meetup and find out who the local entrepreneurs are, and then maybe run your business idea by them. And see what they think. They're a completely unbiased third party. Find somebody in your family who's an entrepreneur, who started a business or is running a business or retired from a business or whatever. Ask them questions. For me, I had my dad who's running our family business for 20 something years, and he's had ups and downs because we were there for all of them. We were feast and famine. Big companies would come in and they would rock our world, and we would just expand, hire dozens of people and buy all these equipment, and then contracts would be over, and then everything would shrink right back down, and we're there after wrestling practice, deep parts. But knowing that was important, this could go gangbusters. This could just go bust. So finding people who have already gone through it is really important. So this podcast is really important. It's helpful for people that don't know what they're getting into, and maybe they're okay with it, but there's always somebody who's done it.
I love it. I love that answer. Going out and asking questions, asking people for advice that, maybe people that have been there, done that or have, are going through it and seeing what their opinions are. Yeah, I think that's super, super important. And you're right. I mean, there's different kind of networking groups all over. Right now we're here in Prescott, Arizona, and there's at least half a dozen different meetups that we
Uh,
attend every week and stuff to get information and just network, but also to run ideas by. So
yeah,
I appreciate that clarity there. Talk to me a little bit about, because I'm for my own curiosity, what was the process like of trying to raise capital and moving from basically being a multi-member LLC per se to
mm,
the share structure and taking outside
C corp,
capital,
yeah,
yeah, C corp and investors and
yeah,
such. Like, what was that? That sounds like it was a pretty big strategic pivot. Maybe
sure.
talk a little bit about what went into that decision making a little bit more, and then what was that process like?
Sure. So when we started, we were an LLC, right? Savage IO LLC, and we only did that for a brief period of time, and maybe a month or two before we realized that we wanted to go the shareholder route. And to do that, you got to transition from shares to stock, right? So you have member shares as an LLC, as a C corp. You have stock that you can allocate. We transitioned to a C corp, and that gave us the ability to create stock and then sell the stock. So when we did that, now we had the stock. Now we have to sell it. To sell it, you have to provide full disclosure, right? So you have a private placement memorandum, a PPM, which has your business plan, your risk statements, things like that. It has to travel with a suitability questionnaire. So you have to make sure that the person that is buying your stock is considered a sophisticated investor. You can't just find, Grandpa Gus who cashed in his 401k, gives you 50 grand, and he thinks he's buying a condo, and you're like, no, you're paying for rent for me in the building that I'm in, and my employees pay paychecks for the next 4 weeks because we need the money, and he doesn't know. And then, and you have this whole thing. So the suitability questionnaire ensures that the people that you're raising money from understand what they're doing, understand that there's a risk. They are what's considered a sophisticated investor. They understand that, there is a risk. They're good with the risk. Let's go. And then the subscription agreement, which tells them what they're getting. So we had one gentleman who was a friend of ours that was kind of connected in circles, and we used him to help introduce us to various people. And it was months or years, maybe years of meetings and lunch and learns where, you get really good at carting around your wares. We could have been selling vacuum cleaners. It wouldn't have looked much different. I had this huge 80-pound storage server with 48 hard drives and all this server and the networking and all this stuff. And we're taking him to like the back rooms and bagel shops and then walking out with 200 grand. I mean, it was really weird. That was new for me, but you just get good at taking technical concepts because you're the founder. Nobody knows the product like you. The people you're talking to don't have any idea what your product is. So you have to find a way to relay that. So that took a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of questions. I remember one time specifically, I was talking to an engineer. He's called an engineer, and he was a server guy. So he was an IT guy already. He was fairly arrogant, and he walked up with his hands behind his back. He was kind of like, so tell me what you got here. And I said, well, I have it's a converged storage server. I have a server component in the front. I have the network interconnect in the back. I've got 48 hard drives, high performance throughput. I've got 2x16 ports and 12 gigabyte, blah, 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 blah. Gave him the whole thing. It was probably 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 minutes of just explaining exactly what it is, because I knew the gentleman I was talking to could understand, where I was at. And then when I was all done, he goes, okay, so it's a server? I said, yeah, we just talked about that. We're past that. Of course it's a server, but it's a converged storage server. You have this and this and this and this. I think that was kind of educating for me, because you're the founder. You build the thing. You know exactly what it is. Nobody needs to know everything that goes inside of the magic box, and his whole point was, what does it do? And I said, oh, what does it do? Oh yeah, you can create a NAS storage appliance. You can create a separate DFS share on the net, and you can all drop files to it. He's like, oh, okay, yeah. I know what a DFS share is, but he doesn't know what's behind that. Well, it's this. Here it is. It's behind it, right here. But it's very helpful when people want to give you money to be able to break down what you have in a way that makes sense to them. So one of our investors was he was the former CEO of Encore Wire, billion-dollar company. Another one was CEO of the New Jersey Devils, New York Yankees, big guys, right? Big guys. but they're big guys with an attention span that's like this. So your whole pitch needs to be the elevator pitch, because that's all you're going to get when you talk to anybody of an executive level and you're relaying engineering topics. You're not going to get a lot out. So that took a lot of learning, but when you get past that, you kind of get a snowball effect going on. You get people that are invested, and then they want to fortify their investment, so they bring other people in that also have money, that they want to use them to help fortify their investment. So it kind of helps snowball into the larger picture, into filling out your subscription agreement, and now you have fully subscribed. That was my experience. It's not always like that. Some people spend years and years and years trying to raise the money that they need. We didn't have that problem. One of the things that we did do, though, is we would use funds to progress through tranches in our growth. If we wanted to go to a certain show and we wanted to demonstrate our servers and what it could do, well, that takes money. Well, somebody's going to have to cash in shares. As the founder, those were almost always our shares. So we would retire shares, and those shares would go towards a new thing, because the existing shareholders didn't want to be diluted. So that was another piece of education for us, that, the loudest voices are the biggest money, and we're never the loudest voice. So to progress to the end of that company, we ended up bringing in a lot of quality people because of where we were, what we transitioned to, pivoting to crypto. And then we had a lot of invested individuals that wanted the lion's share of the company. And the only way to progress through certain tranches was to make sacrifices with your founder stock. So we did that, and the company got to a point where we had a president, we had a CEO, I was a chief technology officer, but we had a manager, we had people in the company that were doing well. And my ownership at that point was so small that it was not necessary for me to stay there. And my experience in the crypto industry was growing so much that the value that I could bring to my family by contracting myself to other companies far outweighed staying at the existing company that I was at. So I turned over the company that I had to the existing individuals that were in it. I still have stock myself now, but I sold off some of my stock to other people that are in there now. So it's not a boohoo sob story, but so it allowed them to continue to grow in the space, but allowed me to get out in the space and help other companies that were also doing things in the crypto space. And that was really eye-opening for me as well. One of the things I really enjoy about Savage.io is that a lot of people in the crypto space now started at my company in Savage.io, and they're all doing really great things now. Several large $100 million, billion-dollar companies that are out there have leadership that started at my company, and you can feel good about that, because we ran a good company, and we are quality people, and we gave quality training and education, and we made mistakes together, and they grew, and then they grew in different places, and then they grew wherever they needed to plant themselves. I have no problem with that at all. I think it's wonderful.
That's awesome. Let me just pause you for a second there, because I think there's some really key pieces here that I'd like to try to get a little bit more clarity on. Is you built a business in a way that when you were ready to exit, or when you felt that it was the right time to exit for you and your family and the value, like you had another chapter to go to, you had a mechanism for doing that, and the company wasn't based on your efforts anymore. Talk to me about, was that a conscious decision by you and the leadership of Savage.io to build the company in that way? And then what were some of those key steps and processes that you guys had to put in place to be able to get you to a point where you can say, well, now I'm ready to move on. I'm just going to sell my shares, and then I'm going to exit stage right. Like, talk to us about that, all leading up to that point, and what made that possible.
So we knew we wanted to grow. I talked earlier about crossing the chasm. Getting to the other side of the chasm means bringing in quality people. We had a couple of stutter starts, but we brought in a quality president who knew business but didn't know crypto. So we were able to bridge that gap. And then he was able to, structure things in a way that was successful. He went on to start a very large cryptocurrency company that everybody knows about, and doing amazing things. That's one piece that we had to put in place there. And I wasn't that guy. I didn't have any executive experience up to that point. So I needed people to come in. I don't have any problems being this guy and flanking myself with this guy's. Because if you're not willing to surround yourself with smarter people and you have to be the smarter guy, you're as smart as you're ever going to be. That's it. You peaked. I don't have the problem at all. Like I said, second to last in my class in high school. I have no problem being the dumb guy. I'm pretty good with bringing in the smart guys, getting what I need from them because they're everywhere. So that's what I did. I brought in a lot of quality talent into Savage, and it helped a lot from the executive side, and then from the management side on the floor and the mining operation there. One of my brother-in-laws has been there for a very long time, and he started from no experience, no IT experience, but he's just a wicked hard worker, and he was able to grow up and grow into the technology side and then the mining side, and now I think he's the VP of a mining company as well, doing quality things, and I love that about Savage. But once all the people were in the right spot, which took money, it took money, and it took, and the majority of that had to come from founder stock, but that there are turning points, forks in the road, where you get to a point and you say, I could just say no, I want a lot of a little, or you could say I want a little of a lot, but this is going to take a haircut, I could have all my hair, and I'll be the biggest fish in this super small pond. So like I said, that's not really a challenge for me. As stock is paper, it means nothing. So we can use that to grow an actual thing. So we did that, and that served a really good purpose for the company and for the people I think that came into it. Brought a lot of quality talent, and then I was able to step out. I stepped out by going part-time, and then eventually we just weaned off to no time, and then I was able to transition to full-time contracting, which was really neat. Full-time contracting allowed me to go into other large companies that knew they had to get into this blockchain thing, but didn't know quite how to do it. So I was fortunate to be able to work with Fortune 500 companies, being their blockchain liaison from the crypto space to the executive leadership and corporate America space. And then they didn't want to get burned because they have shareholders that they have to answer to. So they want to make sure that the relationships that they're getting into are quality. So I was able to do vetting for them to make sure that they were connected with quality people. And that was all working really well. And we were doing great things, and then the bottom fell out.
Well, it does sound like, though, that you had the leadership of your company, like you were able to lead that transition of the business and taking it to a place that it had never been before. I think it sounds like you're downplaying a little bit of your own piece of this puzzle, because without your leadership of seeing where the company could go and bringing in that key talent, you wouldn't maybe have had the success, or the business wouldn't have had the success that it did. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were still like very much the vision and the influence of the company to guide its direction in this forward progress.
I think having the right people in place made it easy, but it wasn't really a challenge convincing everybody of the direction that we needed to go, because it's crypto. The goal was we needed to get bigger, right? What we're doing is working. Now let's do it bigger. And the only question is, do we do it by ourselves? Do we partner with another crypto company that's also doing big things, and then there's questions there. But at that point, you've already got quality leadership in there. And we just used what we had. But the people that were in there, they weren't all rock stars. Some of them came in there and they did it, the best that they could, but they didn't understand the space, or, they were just looking for a job and they didn't want to grow in the space. But I think a key is finding people that can share the vision or have a passion for the thing that you do. And that's challenging sometimes, because everybody starts with just a paycheck, right? I want a paycheck. So what is this you do? What is it? What? But we were fortunate that the people that we had were all very driven to grow into the space. And some of them sought us out. Like I think our president, I believe he came in because he wanted to know more about the crypto space. And he was able to use the executive experience that he had in the past and apply it to a new industry. And that worked really well for him and for Savage. So yeah, so the right people are really important.
So one of the questions I get a lot with talking with my clients is that I just can't find that person, right? I can't find good people or good talent that would look at this business the same way I do. They struggle with this. how did you go about selecting the right people that were going to be in the right chairs at the right time to get the business to the next level? How did you find them, and how did you vet those people?
I think a lot of it is understanding what drives people, and at different tiers, those drivers are different. We've had people come in at an executive level that wanted, the most modest accommodations for compensation, but they wanted stock that would cash out in the long run because they wanted to be part of that future success. That type of engagement would never work for somebody who's on the floor sweeping the floor or, racking and stacking miners, because it doesn't mean anything to them. They're like, I got bills to pay, so I need something now. So finding a way to share a vision that is mutually acceptable for both of those tiers is important. If you are the founder, you are the vision caster. It's not like a position you can hire out. You have to be able to relay positively where the company is going. You have to be able to cast a vision, come up with a mission statement, and then champion that mission statement to everybody that comes in. And if you do it right, it's going to be easy to see the people that are not interested in that mission statement, and then you work them out. Again, we are very fortunate because, like you said, a lot of young people want to get into something that's cutting edge, new age, next gen. That's what crypto is, and it still is now. But back then, we couldn't even tell our service provider that we were mining crypto because they would have thought we were selling guns, drugs, or kids. So a lot of people we hired, at the boots on the ground level, I thought that was awesome.
It's so finding the right triggers or the right motivations for different levels and different positions was key to understanding how to motivate them to get them to accomplish the overall objective for the business, what the business
Yeah.
needed. Yeah. No, that's leadership in a nutshell. Do you think that you learned that leadership skill from your time in the Navy or from your time as working in your dad's shop? Where did you pick up that leadership quality? Leadership is a skill. It's, you're not inherently born as a leader. You have to learn it from somewhere. Where do you think you picked up your ability to lead?
I'm still learning. So there's still, there's a lot to learn. You never stop learning. Next week, I'll probably screw two things up, but it's just, I'm not shy. So that's been a value for me, is I'm not afraid to try new things, afraid to talk to people that may not be approachable, and not afraid to say, hey, you guys are going to love this, check this out, here's what I'm thinking. Data storage server, it's this big, it's like, we'll call it a convert storage server, big data as a service, right? We virtualize the thing. Nope, follow me here, it's going to be great. You have to be able to champion even before you hire anybody. I think part of leadership is relaying a common vision and a common goal, but the other part is understanding who's working for you. My particular model is I prefer the servant leader model, which is kind of the upside down triangle. You understand that you're not tip of the spear. You may be on the top of the triangle, but you're not making any money for the company, right? So your goal is to support all the money makers in the company. So if you've got people on the ground that are racking and stacking, make sure all their tires got air in them in their car. Make sure their windshield wipers work. If their lunchbox is empty, we're getting pizza that day. It's just, they're the ones that are driving the ship. So they need to be taken care of. That's always been my mindset, and I think that goes a long way for people that need to know that that the company that they work for cares for them, because they work the hardest. You don't work. I don't work. The people on the ground, they work hard. Yeah. If your shirt's not sweaty at the end of the day, you're not working. You don't get pizza.
Love it. All right. So the motivation. So I'm going to do a quick recap again for the audience here a little bit, but the motivation was when your company had reached a sustainability point, you had the right people in the right positions, you had processes, procedures, systems, you had the leadership, you had managers. Business was ready to move on to another level, and it was no longer the thing that was the most important to you. Your priorities had shifted, and then you're saying, okay, I'm going to walk myself out slowly, and I'm going to cash out some shares, sell, and then move on to my next adventure. Does that sound
Yep.
Is that a good, fair recap?
So at that point, we were at a position where we could walk away without a negative penalty to the company, and it allowed me to focus more on my family, which, to my discredit, had been neglected for several years at that point because the company took first blood, unfortunately. So it was necessary.
So yeah, I absolutely. And I think that's a very common story with most entrepreneurs, is that there's a priority shift back to what's now the business was more important because of the future and the provision for the family. But then time and quality time or freedom of your time became a different priority for you, and you wanted to take back a little bit more control from the business.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. A lot of people downplay that. I think what entrepreneurs, there's a mindset, and it's not a narcissistic mindset necessarily, but it's just a driven mindset. And it's easy for you to work 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 16-hour days, and completely forget that when you get home, there's a whole family that was sitting there waiting for you to get home, and they just missed all those 12, 14, 16-hour days. That's bank. And if your bank is empty and you haven't been depositing anything into that bank, you can't expect to go home and have everybody waiting at the door for you with arms wide open saying, "We waited and here you are. Yay." They're exhausted too because they have things that they need you for. And if you're not there. So I can attribute the success of that transition to my wife almost 100%. She's a rock solid lady, and she's very strong and independent. And I think the Navy was helpful with that because our first deployment, I'll never forget it. Our first deployment, I mean, we were at the pier at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to be gone for half a year, and she's bawling, and I'm trying to hold it together, and and then I go, and then the next day I'm on the ship bawling, and she's trying to AOL chat me how sad she is, and it's terrible. And then on our next deployment, I think she slowed down and kicked me out, and the door just like rolled out with my sea bag, and she was like, "I'll see you." I mean, you learn how to take care of yourself. And so that was really helpful for the business side, because when I'm not there, she got good at just, okay, this way, and it toughens up you as a family sometime in ways that you wish it didn't. But at the end of the day, if, same thing, we both share the same vision, where, our family is the number one most important thing. So it's necessary to force that time together. So we didn't see it as an option. We had to take a step back from the company, and we had to start putting coins back in the family bank.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, this story resonates with me. I mean, that's basically, it's mine and my wife's story with 12 years. Every 3 or 4 months I was gone, and then I was home again and gone again, home again. So
Right.
yeah, I absolutely understand with firsthand knowledge how hard that transition can be. So yeah, I mean, hats off to all the sailors that continue to do it on a regular basis.
It's brutal. It's tough because a lot of stories don't end that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about those crucial conversations that you had to have with maybe your board of directors and your leadership team. And when you started to circulate, hey, I'm kind of on the way out now, or I'm going to be moving in a different direction. How did that go with the management of the company? So your actual doers, the guys doing the job in the company, and then how did that go with your board of directors, and how did you navigate both of those transitions?
Well, it wasn't all high fives. It was challenging because some of the people there said, "You absolutely cannot leave. This company will collapse without you." And other of them said, "Give us your stock and get out." So it was challenging. But there's a lot that we could unpack with that. But like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of investors that they come in and they say, "My money's in here, so my opinion matters," and that's it. Well, when you're one of 88, who do you listen to? Oh, it's like, wait, I'm doing what now? Yeah, no, no, I'm not doing that. Oh, I'm doing this. Okay. So you're not going to make everybody happy. So there was a contingent of shareholders that wanted me to leave, wanted my stock. I wasn't opposed to doing that because we had to bring in quality talent, and we did. And, I retired large portion of my share so that we could do that. And we brought in the quality talent that we needed, and the company continued to make money. So when I did transition out, it wasn't really an event. There was nothing that happened. But the only thing that I did do is I made it very clear that when I transition out and when I give up my stock, I'm giving up my fiduciary to the company. I no longer have that obligation to put the company first. I can't do that anymore. There was too big of a personal penalty to me to carry that. So I verbalized that several times, making sure they knew that I am willing to give up my stock so that you guys do not get diluted. We have quality people that come in, and I'm going to make a transition for the betterment of myself and my family. At the end of the day, that was easier than I thought it would be. There was one penalty, I would say, and I'll leave names out, but There was an individual that I considered my mentor in the business space. He runs a very large pallet company, and he has 27 different factories around the country. He runs his business very large, several $100 million a year, and his model is that, you know, basically he's a ministry disguised as a pallet company. It's really great. His whole goal is to service the people that work for him, because it doesn't take an education or a higher level of education to repair a used pallet. So the people that all work for him, um, are basically his mission field, and I love that. I wish I could have spent more time with him, because he's a quality guy. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from him, from my future executive positions, and how I carry myself as a leader. His company had 4 pillars that he ran his company off of: trust, discipleship, integrity, and service. That's a great set of pillars to build any company off of. Training, you're growing, you're providing a service, and you're serving your people that are making money for your company. That's the way it should be. So I loved that. That was hard for me, but like I said, I couldn't do it differently, because I knew the penalty that I would have had personally with my family, and it wasn't worth it.
How did your team take it? How did the guys in the business take it?
They were more so that was probably the biggest penalty. Was they didn't want me to leave. Obviously, I had every brother-in-law I have, and my brother, working at the company at one point or another. My friends, other people that I knew in the neighborhood, they were all working there. So most of them, yeah, still friends with now. Some of them are just doing amazing things. But yeah, it was challenging for them, only because I wasn't going to be there every day. But the crypto space is just not that big. So I keep up with just about all of them today still. And when I left, that didn't change. Yeah, I still saw a bunch of them at Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, yeah, it wasn't a big drastic change. I didn't move. I just stopped working at that company. So, but that was challenging for some of them, because they grew up in that, over the last several years, in that business with me, but they were in good hands.
So they obviously, you were their leader, you're the visionary, and then you left. So it did leave a little bit of a mark on them. But did you think that that was successful? And maybe what would you do again if you had to go through that exiting process again?
Well, what I did is I just I pulled myself out and made myself available part-time. I wasn't needed a lot. So after I did that and I pulled myself out, I think it was maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, where it wasn't necessary for me to go back anymore. And the company was running like a top. And I will say, a lot that's largely in part to the president that we brought in. He had a very solid business mind. His name's Mike. And Mike did a really great job at putting much needed structure into the company.
Awesome. So after 2 or 3 months of kind of gradually letting go, walking out, everything was on its own. It still ran without you. And that's when you felt like, yeah, I'm good. I can move on to my next thing.
Yeah.
So another question I would have is, did you get what you were looking for in the exit, as far as professionally, but also personally? Did you get those goals? Like you're saying, were you able to really get what you wanted in your priorities and fill up that family bank, if you called it? Like, did it work? Did your plan work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was similar to what I would say when I got out of the military. I was in 9 years, I had 2 kids, and I didn't really know anything about them. I knew more of my 2-year old than I did of my 4-year old, just because I'd spend more physical time with her. But my next tour would have been underway or overseas, and I would have lost him again. I just didn't want to do that, so there would have been a penalty. So we made a decision as a family that we are gonna separate and get out and do the civilian life. And it was much like that when I left Savage. I needed to fill up that family bank. We had gone through some financial challenges that were just rugged for the family, and a lot of them, it's different if you're making money and you're not there. But when you're not there and the bills still aren't getting paid, and you're looking down the barrel of bankruptcy, and you can't get a lien off of your house, and you're still not home because you're still working and traveling, trying to raise money or whatever. Years of that definitely takes a toll on your family. So when I transitioned and I went contracting, contracting is easy, especially in the crypto space. You can do a lot of that from home, and we did. So I got a ton of family time, and it was long time overdue.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think a lot of people, I mean, this is partly my own journey too, but a lot of entrepreneurs, we build these businesses and they initially start off as our freedom ticket, right? We're going to be our own business owner. We're going to work for
Mm,
ourselves. And
yeah.
over time, somehow the thing that was our freedom becomes our prison. And
Mm,
unless you know how to change and unless you're comfortable changing again, you get stuck, right? It sounds like your story, you realized where you were at and it wasn't giving you that fulfillment that it probably did in the early days. And you're like, no, my priorities have changed. I need to spend more time with family. I need to do something that's going to provide better for them as well. But it's, you know, I have something that I need to run towards and it's better than where I'm at right now. And just because it's
yeah.
comfortable, because this is what I've been doing for how many years, it doesn't mean that this is where I have to stay forever. There's something else out there that I want and I'm going to go get it. And you made decisions and those decisions had real consequences, right? There's relationship consequences, there's financial consequences, but not all of them are bad. So your story is really, I think, really powerful that you can continue to change and adapt. And with that, let's talk about what you transitioned towards. I mean, now you said contracting work but now you're a managing partner of
Mm,
another successful crypto industry company. Talk to us about maybe how those lessons, what were the lessons that you took from that Savage IO experience now as another managing partner of a major firm? Like, what were those key lessons that has now led you to this next level that you are now currently operating at?
sure. So when we went contracting, we like I said earlier, we're servicing Fortune 500 companies, helping with this crypto space thing, and we were doing really well, making good money. One of the things that I call them God things. One of the God things that happens, I feel like he puts you where you need to be to grow, that kind of thing. What had happened is, this is 2020, so we'd done it for several years. We were doing really well. In 2020, COVID hit, and during the COVID crisis, all of these Fortune 500s where they were letting people go and cutting back and doing all of these reservation steps. In doing so, everything that I'm doing with these companies, crypto, that's all R&D. So that just stopped. So basically every contract I had in 1 week just went away. So what had happened for me, it was, now I'm looking down the barrel of unemployment and I'm saying, holy cow, what just happened? I can't go back to Savage because Savage has been running for years. There's no place for me there. So I had no choice but to file for unemployment and basically just, we got to start this thing over again and figure out where I'm at, what I'm doing. Hundreds of resumes, threw them all over the place. Lots of good work. I lived in Rochester, New York. So lots of good work. Had to move to California, had to move to Dubai, had to move to wherever there was a mining operation that needed somebody who could run a mine. Wasn't near me. So that was really challenging. And what happened for me there was I got 100 job applications everywhere, and I'm sitting around, and that just doesn't work for me. So we had a friend of ours that literally, she was I'd be cautious here, but she was an older lady who said, if you're sitting around, you want to help me finish my back deck. And sure, I grew up with tools. Where do you want me to go? I'm just sitting around. So I fixed her back deck, and then she's got a fairly sizable house. She said, well, can you fix my stairs? Can you fix my ladder? Can you take my tree house from that tree to that tree? That was weird. But, and it turned into all these things. And then she had a friend, and then she had a friend, and then she had a friend. Next thing you know, every day, all day, I'm doing these odd jobs. So like I am wired to do, I said, this is a business. So I started a new handyman services and got an old beater Sprinter van, and then filled it up with tools from Harbor Freight, and there's my day. So I went around and I earned my pizza. I came back every day sweaty, and I was just busting hump. And then I quickly found out that through my church, a lot of prayer requests that we were hearing were from husbands that had lost their jobs due to COVID, that were stuck sitting around. So I said, I've got more work than I can shake a stick at, because I learned something through the handyman world. Nobody shows up on time, so or at all. So what I did is I would literally show up 15 minutes before I was supposed to be anywhere at a job, and I would just park down the road and play with my phone. And then 1 minute before I had to be there, I'd turn the truck on and I would pull in the driveway, because I learned that the only thing they remember is that you showed up on time. You could do a terrible job, break 3 things on your way out the door. They don't. They were like, he was here on the minute. So I had work coming out of my ears. So what I did is I hired all those husbands that were losing their jobs. There were salespeople at companies selling HVAC systems. There's a kid from college that lost his job. There's a couple of husbands that just didn't have work. There were teachers and whatever, just random people that, you underestimate how handy you could be because you do the same things around your house, but why not do them for somebody else and make money that way? So I hired all these guys, and I had half a dozen people working for me at this handyman company. And next thing you know, they're going all over the place. And now I'm not sweating anymore, so I can stop eating the pizza. And now I'm just organizing all these trucks, people driving all over the place. And that worked really well. So for, I don't know, a couple of years, we did that. And then I got a call from a friend of mine who was starting a cryptocurrency company, and he needed a chief operating officer. And now this was going to put me back into the crypto space. And I said, well, this is really where I want to be. So I sold, very economically accommodating, to my number one guy, transitioned all my jobs and accounts and everything over to him. And then I pivoted back into the crypto space. What I left out of that was, as soon as I hired my first guy, I was able to call the unemployment office to get off of unemployment because I just didn't need it anymore. This thing that I was doing to fill my time turned into a full-blown business. And that was just amazing. It was totally not what I was thinking would happen or expected or wanted or anything. But, it's just one of those God things. It filled the need right when I needed it. And that gap of time from the time everything fell down to somebody calling me saying they needed an executive at a cryptocurrency company, that allowed me to fill that time and keep the bills paid. And I lost a couple of pounds off my midline too. So that's good.
That's an amazing transition story too. So almost by accident, you started another business. That's crazy. That's crazy. And talk to me then about that transition, because you had another thing, because it's the same story, right? You build something up, but then you have another chapter that you want to go back into. And talk to me about how you knew that this guy was capable of taking over this new business baby that you had created in such a short period of time. And what was that process like? Because it sounds really great that you have two, really both ends of the spectrum. You have both a C Corp exit and you have a standard mom and pop LLC exit.
So that was actually pretty easy. It was, hey, do you want to make more money for doing the same thing? What I learned is that there's a company called Jobber, and a lot of handyman, a lot of skilled tradesmen use it. It allows them to schedule and drive and deliver and bill and things like that. I had used Jobber with all my guys. It was really easy. You don't have to do much. Just they put in what the work they did, and then I could send off the invoice. They can pay with a credit card, and you get, it tracks everything. It's real easy. So it was really just explaining to him, did you want to take this thing over? This is how you do it. Oh yeah, all right. It was a no-brainer. It was really easy. I was actually moving out of the state. So at that time, we were looking at moving out of New York and up to Maine, where we live now. And this was, another God thing. I can't do that if I have this whole handyman business I'm running in New York. You can't really remotely run a handyman business, because if something's wrong, you got to show up and make it right. So this allowed me the freedom to do that. So we transitioned over to him. And it wasn't really hard. It wasn't like, all right, so I built this business up, it's a 6-figure business, obviously. So, you give me $500,000, you could have it. It wasn't like that. It was, we want to treat all these customers right, and we're not just going to shut down. You guys are all doing a great job. You can continue to do this. Let's talk about like a residual. I'll be looking for a commission over the next X number of months or years, and then you run it like your own business. Interesting side note. The company is called a New Bit Handyman Services, because I actually owned a New Bit, the domain, and I meant it to be an offshoot company for crypto. A New Bit would have been Bitcoin, but a New Bit turned into Drill Bit, and it still worked. So
there you go.
Yeah,
it's good to have flexible domain names.
Yeah, right. So that transition was fairly simple. And I just gave him the lion's share of my tools, the ones that I knew I wouldn't need, and then I moved over to the executive role at the cryptocurrency company, which was a remote position. So it gave me a lot of freedom to do the things, to do the move up here to Maine. I did have some travel. It was headquartered out of near State College, Pennsylvania. So I did some travel down and back for the first year, but it allowed us to move our family up here into something more that we're looking for: more room, more property, more rural, less Rochester.
So I love how you just keep reinventing yourself from phase to phase of your life. It's amazing.
Mm.
And it's so encouraging to hear that it doesn't really matter what you do or where you come from. You can always reinvent yourself. There's always something to go towards.
Absolutely.
As long as you got a direction, a purpose, and you see the goal, you can always, always, always reinvent yourself to go get something different.
Yeah.
And so the question I wanted to ask you,
Uh-huh.
between the two exits, which one did you enjoy more, and what commonalities did you see between them, and what were their stark differences?
I very much enjoyed the Anubit handoff much more than the Savage IO handoff, because I was doing my guys a favor. My guy, particularly, his name's Tom, and I was able to give him something that he could continue to run with. And I had built this thing up with a Rolodex of, I think at that point we had 120 customers, because we just couldn't take it anymore. I had to maintain that same principle of everybody shows up 15 minutes early, and I'm going to pay you to sit there and play on your phone. But at 1 minute, you start the truck and you pull in the driveway. And because of that one thing, now there's always a thing. You find that thing that makes you stand out, your phone will never stop ringing. And that turned out to be the case. So I would say the difference here was that I knew I created something that I could pass on to somebody that was gonna bring value to him, and that he could continue to bring value to, the customers that we had built up. The difference is obviously, as I didn't have any shareholders, it was just all my company to do with whatever I needed to. There was no voices other than my wife's, which is the only one that mattered. And we made a mutual decision that we were going to do this transition and allow us to move up here to Maine. And it was fairly smooth. When we handed it off to Tom, we were able to get on board with this new company, which allowed us to move up to Maine and did serve no penalty to my family. So we went from a little, very small single family ranch in Rochester, New York, with a third of an acre in the back, to a large farmhouse that my wife has been in my wife's family for 100 years. And we got 100 and something acres on the side of a granite mountain. I mean, there's no comparison. So from a
That's
quality of
beautiful.
life perspective, this is absolutely where we want to be. And this is how I want to raise my kids. So it allowed me to transition up here while still maintaining my cryptocurrency goals of growing positively into the space and making positive change into the space. The space needs nothing but positivity. We need quality companies doing quality things, because we came from a very negative place. So my whole goal is to do that, promote positive business commerce in the space, because that's the only way it's going to grow. So I can do that from here, and I do travel, but not a lot. Yeah. So that's basically how we made this transition, and how the transition from handyman to back to crypto took place.
I love it. I mean, it's such a powerful story. Phil, this is a great testimony. I love it. Talk to us now about what's getting you excited today, because I know we haven't talked at all about what you're doing right now.
Sure.
Well, like, because you're a managing partner of another major industry player in the crypto space here. Talk to us about what you're doing. What's getting you excited?
Sure. So let's see, there's a quick transition from that company. That company was called Veracari, and Veracari was around for about 2 years, maybe 3 years. I think it was a year before I got there. And as with most crypto companies, there's a lot of volatility, and a lot of it hinges off of your ability to mine crypto. And it was a Bitcoin miner hosting company, and there was a lot of challenges that came with that company, particularly to do with the facility that we were mining in, our power agreement, and just some bad luck. That was during the time of the start of the Ukraine war, and the oil prices going through the roof, and then fuel prices and electricity prices. And if you didn't have a rock solid PPA, power purchase agreement, then you were up a creek. And we unfortunately fell into that area. So what had happened is, basically the facilities that we had, the price just skyrocketed for us, which in turn made us unable to support our SLAs with our customers. So we tried transitioning off. We tried at cost. We tried sharing different demand response benefits and curtailment benefits with them. And at the end of the day, we were sinking ship. So what happened is, basically the board of directors decided that this was a good time to shut things down. So they decided, just based on my experience in different companies, to put me in the interim CEO position and just do a graceful shutdown of the company. So my goal was to just talk to vendors, talk to creditors, sell out real estate that we had, um, and then transition off the miners that we were hosting for our customers, and then just shut it down. So that timed perfectly with where I'm at today. So while I was going through that process, the way I understand it, I was talked up to somebody at Compass Mining by somebody that I know, and then we were introduced. So they found out that I'd be looking for a new position, and then I was introduced to Compass, who was introduced to Paul, who's the CEO of Compass, and we were able to do a chat, and he felt that I brought enough value to bring me on board. So he brought me on board with just a specific purpose, was to create a repair arm of Compass Mining, which is Novomod. Novomod is a wholly owned subsidiary of Compass Mining. And we're kind of, our goal is to set an enterprise class industry standard for doing repairs. It's currently based on the skill of the individual that's touching your machine. We want to raise that bar and produce a standard of service that is not unique, acceptable, but expected across all platforms of miners that we repair. This one is really hard, so I did my best. The guy that normally fixes thing was off today. So you got Bruce, who's not necessarily the best guy, but he did his best. So we're getting away from that model. So we want to get a really high SLA, and our goal is to service as many customers as we can with the new enterprise class industry standard of care that you should expect from a repair provider.
I love it. I love it. I love how you've always seemed to go upward direction. Even when you pivoted to accidentally started a handyman service, you still went up. And I think that just speaks to the quality of your character and who you are as a person. It's just, you can't keep a good dog down, I mean, you just always seem to rise to the top, So, and I believe that speaks a lot to your character for sure. More than anything else, it speaks to who you are. And it sounds like, again, you had a third transition and winding down a company. And how would I know we're kind of running a little long here, but this is really interesting because every time you talk, I learn something new, and I'm like, oh man, that's juicy there. The winding down of the company, how was that process? How stressful was that process? How long did it take? And what were some of the decision-making criteria that went into saying, yeah, no, we're going to call it quits?
One of the things that I learned, everybody wants to jump on board when the sun is shining and the birds are chirping, right? When it's raining and the tires in the car are flat and there's no gas in the tank and the seats are ripped and the windows are blown out, everybody's looking for another car. So that's the biggest challenge, is knowing that people are gonna you learn a lot about people during those times, and some good, some bad. I'm just saying, it's a lot easier to keep up business professional when everything's going well and everybody's getting paid. When you're not getting paid, that's when that's when you take off a few masks and you learn who people are. So that goes for people that you work with, goes for, shareholders, board members, customers. The challenges with winding down a business are just knowing that you're not going to know what version of somebody you're going to get on any given day. So you just, a lot of grace. We're talking about, customers that we had that rely on us to do a certain thing, and we're just unable to do that thing. So you have to understand that they are going to be ticked, and they're ticked because their customers are yelling at them because they're ticked, and you can only do so much. So transparency is really key in a process like that. So I sold a piece of property to a company up in Ohio, and at the end of the day, I said, we have this property. Here's what we paid. Here's fair market value. We're going to meet in the middle because I have some creditors I have to pay off, and this will allow me to pay off those creditors and basically give you an at-cost site. I think it's a good deal for you, and it'll solve my problem as well. You don't have to posture in a position like that because you don't have time. You don't have room. You don't have bandwidth. You have a job to do. So I think people appreciate that. The chips are down and you're just trying to make a bad thing less bad, not good. The only thing you can do is offer genuine transparency. And I found more often than not, a lot of people respect that because they understand the position you're in. And if you're talking to owners, they're usually entrepreneurs as well, and they've either been there or they understand. So that's helpful too.
That's awesome. Phil, again, you have such a powerful testimony. You have so much wisdom to give here. I really appreciate what you guys are doing at Novomod. I think that your enterprise class solution for ASIC repair, I think, is a phenomenal goal. And you guys are leaps and bounds tackling issues that nobody else really has approached very well in the marketplace. Talk to me
Thanks.
a little bit about your team and your team building skills. How have you approached building your systems, your processes with your current team?
Current team. Okay. Relationships is key. That's a big deal. Knowing people in certain areas. I've got a quality manager now. His name's Billy, and he is awesome. Very skilled. He's been repairing miners as long as I've been in the miner space. I think because the space is so young, I'm considered an OG, I think, because I've been around since 2012. It's kind of sad because that tells you how young the space is. There's a lot of room to grow, but he's been repairing that long as well, and we are very fortunate to get him on board. Having a quality manager that can share the vision is huge. He's been pivotal in building out processes on the ground. He works out of Denver, where our headquarter facility is there. We're growing from there. Building up the team, we started just grabbing people in the area, maybe that were passionate about crypto, or some folks from Compass Mining that we could that were looking to make a transition, or learn a new skill or something like that. I did learn a trick from another contract that I did over in Buffalo. We had a 30 megawatt facility there, and what they did there was they hired felons and basically became a second chance site. So that's something that we're doing now at our facility. What's unique about that is, when as a second chance site in the crypto space, right? You have to find someone, particularly in my industry now, repairs. You have to find somebody that can sit in a chair all day. Then you have to find someone who can look through pair of glasses all day and solder, and focus without going, "This is stupid, I'm never going to get it." Because that's very much so happened. But what we found is that when you hire somebody who doesn't necessarily have all the same options as everybody else, you get a different kind of motivation. If you could hire a felon that, we have very strict rules around who we hire. We don't hire any violent felons. We don't hire any sexual predators or anything like that. That's way out here. But you can hire people that just have the felon label. Maybe they made a poor choice with alcohol, or any number of things that just put them on the list. And now it's very hard for them to get a job. So by offering them a position that not only gives them a steady paycheck, but gives them an industry that they can grow in and develop a skill set in, it's a different kind of passion. I mean, they're motivated in a way that you don't really have to sell them on, So I found that out in Western New York when we did it up there, and we're implementing that in Denver. And so far we've had really good results, because at the end of the day, the power is all in our hands with those types of people. If we don't like what we see, it's very simple. We don't see you anymore. And then they just go back. So we're kind of taking that approach and building our team from that perspective. Not everybody in our team is a felon, obviously, but by opening ourselves up to other types of people like that, it makes you a more dynamic team, but also it kind of grows your culture in a different way. We have a very strong culture of respect and integrity. We don't yell. I don't yell at you. You don't yell at me. Bob doesn't yell at Fred. Fred doesn't yell at Frank. Our boss, Paul, he doesn't yell at anybody. I would never think to yell at Paul. You don't, because that brings no value to anybody at all. So I think I learned that early on, and part of that is relational. So I've worked with people years apart, because you treat them right here during a bad situation, and you end up doing something again later over here, or you just maintain a quality relationship. Strongest relationships in the space came out of a guy that I worked with a long time ago who accused me of stealing, and I just said, didn't do it. He said, "You're the only guy that was there. You could have done it." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to show you how important my integrity is." So I stopped everything I was doing. I called everybody, everywhere, built this whole matrix of people that could have possibly done this thing, and And I was literally delivering it to him. And then he had somebody call him who was the perpetrator of this thing. And he was just impressed that I took all of that time to do the thing. I said, you can't call my integrity into question and expect me to just say, "Yeah, maybe, I don't know." No, it's the most important thing. But because of that, you can carry relationships from business to business to business that way. So I don't always win, but just don't ever stop making that super important.
I love it.
And I found
And
that's helpful.
yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what you said earlier, where you have to understand everybody's motivation and be able to tug on those heartstrings to make sure everybody's in a shared vision or an alignment of what the purpose and the goal is, and everybody's properly motivated.
Right.
And it sounds like you're trying different avenues of motivation with different types of people. And I think that's amazing. That's awesome to hear, giving people a second chance and really trying to change people's lives. I think that's, again, it's awesome. I think you got such a cool story, Phil, and I really appreciate you taking all this time to share it with me. I'll go ahead and we'll land a plane here. I'll leave you with the last word here. So, what
Okay.
is like if you could boil your entire experience down to the single most important message or nugget of wisdom for owners that are struggling with exiting or secession or figuring out what's next for themselves, what's the most important lesson that all of your life experience can boil down to help that person?
I would say we talked a little bit about integrity. I would say whatever situation you're in, I guarantee you 1 year from now, 2 years from now, you're going to look back and you're going to realize it was never as bad as you thought it was. And having that perspective is helpful because knowing that when you're in the thick of it, you have nowhere to turn where it isn't your reality. And that can sometimes play a factor into your integrity. You could do things, say things that are not appropriate or important or necessary, and at the end of the day, that's the only thing that people are going to remember anyway. They're not going to remember the numbers. They're not going to remember how many days you worked. But if they can trust you and they know that you're somebody that carries themselves with integrity, then that's important. I would say if you can just put your best foot forward every day, if you can do your best, if you can um, rely on the people around you and surround yourself with smart people, and trust God for the rest, because you don't know what tomorrow brings. You have no idea. I spawned a random handyman company from COVID that was not in my roadmap at all, but it all came from I would say I'm going to be a little more humble than that. Humble pie. Don't be afraid to eat it. Lots of it. Quick anecdote there. I was in the thick of my handyman work and I was sweaty and dirty and gross. And I took a break because I needed to get something, lunch maybe, from Walmart, because it was the cheapest place to get lunch. You can go to where the not the bakery, but the meat section is. You can pick and choose a couple of things. And it was like $4 or something, and you could end up with food. And I just came out of my truck, and I was sitting in my truck, and I was ready to plow through it. And then who should walk by? But my president, Mike, the president of Savage IO, and he was like, "Phil, what are you doing?" I'm fixing outlets, building porches, whatever I can do. There's nothing wrong with humility, and it's growing, and it builds you. It builds who you are, and everybody should try it. Lastly, you can't speak too much on integrity because it's super important. It's kind of the cornerstone of any business transaction. You could have quality terms, but if you can't trust the guy who's signing the paper on the other side of the table, it doesn't mean anything. So I try to do my best to maintain my integrity. Like I said, I don't always win. Last quick anecdote. I have one story that I have from my childhood that I'll never forget that kind of fortified this position for me. We went to what's just Six Flags, I guess. At the time, it was called Darien Lake in New York. And me and my brother and maybe my friend, I'm not sure, it's three of us, we were leaving Six Flags or Darien Lake. And we were going to meet my parents before cell phones. We were going to meet my parents out front, and it started raining. It was getting dark out. And to get into Darien Lake, they had these little phone booth type things that you could, like toll booths, basically. You stand in the middle and both sides are open. And it started pouring out. So all three of us jumped in one. Well, that's where you pay to go park, but you only have to pay until 4 o'clock. Right after that, anytime after 4 o'clock, it's free to park. Well, it happened to be 4:05. So there was nobody in these booths because at 4 o'clock they leave, but the booths don't have doors on them. And it was raining. So we all jumped at a booth and we were just waiting for it to stop raining. Well, this car pulls up and just holds out $5. Said, "Thank you." And then I took the $5. And then he said, "Well, where do I park?" And I said, "Well, over there." And he said, "Okay, thank you." And he was kind of awkward about it because I didn't know what I was doing. And he drove away. And then, of course, the gears are turning now and my entrepreneurial bone is tingling a little bit. And I said, guys, here's what we're going to do. these guys are going to pull up and just give us money. We're just going to take it. I said, I've got all these pamphlets. They're maps of Darien Lake. Just give them a map and then take their money and off they go. Tell them to park over there. We did that for maybe 15 minutes. I don't know. We made $100 maybe. And we thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I saw my dad's lights pull up and we all jumped out. It had slowed down enough rain. So we sprinted to the car and we're giggling and laughing. We're trying to figure out how we're going to split the money, whatever. And my dad's driving home and we got probably halfway home. And my dad finally was like, what are you guys talking about? And we said, Dad, we were sitting in the booth. They just started giving us money, so we just took it. That was the fastest. I thought he hit a deer. He slammed the brakes on. The whole car stops. He turned around, took us back to the security shack at Darien Lake, and made us give all our money back. I'll never forget. I'm giving these guys in the security shack money. I swear to God, I think they were divvying it up before we even left. I mean, they were laughing like, okay, yeah, okay. And I was like, Dad, they're going to keep it. He's like, it doesn't matter. It's not yours. And I'll never forget that because that was a very big deal for me. At that point, I had never had $100. I'd never had $10. It was just more money than I had ever seen. And it wasn't even a question of what to do with that money for my dad. So that was a big thing for me. And it kind of planted a seed that, you can do a lot as an entrepreneur, but it takes just one stupid decision to really screw up your integrity, and that's not something you can just undo. But like I said, I don't always get it right, but that's always at the forefront of my thinking when I'm making business decisions like that, whether it's to start a company, end a company, hire somebody, fire somebody, start an engagement, lock into a vendor. Keep that as at the forefront because that's not something that's easily built, but super, super quick to throw away.
I love it. Phil, that's such a great story. It's so powerful. Your entire testimony is amazing. Really appreciate your time. Everybody, I will put a link to Phil's, a link to something. I'll figure out that.
Just link something. Doesn't matter. Anything, whatever you want. Just link it.
I'll put a link to where you could reach out to Novomod if you're an enterprise class ASIC miner and you need his services. But yeah, Phil, thank you so much for being here. This has been powerful. And for that, we will see everybody next time.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Alex.